Welcome to the Inside Texas postgame reaction show, powered by InsideTexas.com. Joe Cook, Evan Veith. We're right here on Steve Spurrier, Florida Field, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. The swamp, as you can tell. Texas falls to Florida 29-21. Longhorns tried to make a last gasp effort to come back and tie it at the end. Fell short, fell out of Arch's hands in a spike as clocks hit 000. We'll talk a little bit about what happened, what we saw, what Steve Sarkisian and some of the players said. We have a ton of reaction already up over at InsideTexas.com. So go to that first link in the description, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then we can dive into what today was. And a lot of disappointment with the Longhorns, with the Longhorn offense. We saw a lot of different things happen with that offense, but we really didn't see rushing yards gained by anybody wearing a number other than 16.
Yeah, you could have fooled me that this was a team that returned their RB1 off of a bye week. It started out slow for the Longhorns. They never really got the running game going, and then immediately they're down by 10 after two of Florida's drives to just one in Texas. So I believe it was only 15 total rushing yards between all of Wisner's carries, and I believe Christian Clark had one, but it was really all Wisner, and it was nothing from Wisner, which not entirely his fault. The offensive line had another terrible game on another kind of building on a terrible season for this offensive line. It's disjointed. They don't have a left guard. They commit a lot of penalties throughout the game. It started poorly with the run game, and it just made everything worse going on throughout the game for the offense. So most of the rushing yards, I believe it was only around 60, came from Arch Manning's legs, and a lot of that came off of scrambles and a few QB runs, but just couldn't get that run game established. And that, at the end of the day, was cut and dry what the main problem for this Longhorn offense was.
Yeah, exactly. And, Wisner got in the end zone twice. Good for that return, but, you want a little bit more from that.
Yeah.
Ryan Wingo also scored, but the running game. And I think when you look at, and I wrote about this in an instant reaction, it's like a lot of these players have had war wounds. They've been to Tuscaloosa, and they had the clunker against TCU, and they've played Washington close, and that was a good team. And, so on and so forth. Georgia, Michigan, Georgia, some of those wins, some of those losses, all those tight games, they got punched early, and they couldn't really punch back in the run game. And kind of like you mentioned, the offensive line has been a problem this year. It's not just like, oh, we're looking for zone. Oh, we're looking for gap. You're looking for anything at this point that's not Arch Manning. And that is a huge problem because Texas is going to face a lot of defensive fronts that are just as good, if not better, than this Florida one.
Yeah, if you look at this remaining schedule for this Texas Longhorns team, you just go down the list of how do you rank these defensive lines. Florida probably to come in at third at best here. Oklahoma's got a great front for next week. Georgia, of course, every year is going to have a great front, even if it's not quite what you expect from the teams in the past. So it's a bad look for this offense where Florida's the one, which, credit to them, their defensive line played a heck of a game. They were getting to the quarterback. They were neutralizing the run game. But this is one where Texas had to have it to show that they can do it later in the season. So I don't know where your confidence can lie in this run game going forward. If it's another player on the offensive line coming in, if it's another running back coming in, I know you have your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things is you can talk about recruiting and you can look at some of the rankings of the guys who are out there. And you think about maybe, you look at the right side of the line and how highly ranked they were, and then the left side of the line and how, you like what you get from Trevor Gooseby, but he's kind of a little bit on an island. And it's not like he's a dominating run blocker either. And I think what I'm really kind of starting to realize is two different things. One, so many of these guys are being thrown in probably earlier in their career than you like. When you bring in Nick Brooks, who's got talent, when you bring in Connor Stroh, whose aspect that you really liked was maybe his size and possible developed strength, even as a third-year guy, you're not getting the strength. That he's out there too early.
Yeah. And
then that also means, well, why isn't Neto Umeozulu going? And why is Nick Brooks having to go? And it seems like they're just throwing things at the wall because they don't know it works when it comes down to the run game. And so they have to say, like, okay, maybe this true freshman's the one that can get it. And maybe that's where we can find some stuff in the run game. And that's just a problem.
Yeah.
And I know that each position has cycles, but at the same time, you don't have to abide by cycles either in modern college football. And I think, there's always a benefit of hindsight and being able to say, well, they should have taken somebody. But we know Texas is always going to be someone that the market looks at and like, would you like my players? Would you like to, and agents and things like that? Like, would you like this? Like, it's not like they're operating on an island there.
No.
But they made the choice to roll with what they got, and the results you're seeing are the results you're seeing. So big problem, especially when you look at what Oklahoma's going to bring next week, and especially in an environment that's not going to be like this with 90,000 people, but it's going to be raucous all the same, with half being loud, half the other way. Because that run game doesn't work, they can pass protect all right. It's hard to pass protect all the time.
Yeah.
When you got guys like Tyreek Sapp and, again, talented players, and they were putting it on Arch because they knew it wasn't going to be anything but Arch ball for most of the second half.
I mean, what you got to give Napier is that if there's one position on that team that he has recruited well and gotten depth in, it's that defensive line there. Without three of key players on that roster, and they still were running about 6 to 7 deep players on that line. So they were able to kind of come in and come out of the game, still get their best pass rushers in, while Texas was just tired out there. They purely dropped back a lot, and they didn't actually have a ton of time of possession because of the running back difference on the Florida side of the ball. But when they were playing from behind, it just meant a lot of pure dropbacks for Arch Manning. He likes to take his time and find a play out there, but that also means that these linemen are blocking for 4 and 5 seconds on the plays. So you saw them get tired. You saw them get bullied late in the game. And, of course, Texas does make a bit of a comeback there. They get lucky with DJ Lagway, kind of misses a read to the left and throws the ball to Michael Taft. And then give it to Manning. He had a great throw before that to Ryan Wingo on that 38-yard touchdown. And then the next drive gets a quick 60 yards and then punches it in with Contravian Weiser. And suddenly you're talking about an 8-point game to end the game when really Florida probably should have won this by 10-plus at the end of the day. So a good comeback from Texas, at least you can give Arch, and not a perfect day for him by any means. But I think that's what most stood out to me positively for this Texas team was he battled, and he came back in that game.
Any gate can be a tailgate.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect from Arch. It kind of, I was trying to think of what previous Texas losses this may have looked like because, okay, you're giving them explosive plays, you're giving up the run game a little bit more, and we've seen that. The program seems not past that. It seems to have advanced mostly to a stage where that's an anomaly and not the norm. But that means that the quarterback's got to do a lot. And it looks like some of those games where Sam, for better or for worse, had the ball in his hands a lot. Sometimes he made things happen, sometimes he didn't, and that's what we saw today. There's still some standard things that he's just not doing fantastic. Yeah. And again, I don't want to oversell this, but this was a very, very loud environment. You know, I've been to the places like Alabama and Michigan and Ohio State, and once that team had that opening drive touchdown, had that stop, like that kept the fans engaged. It filled in a little bit because I think there may have been, I don't know, maybe there are people in parking lots thinking, do we really want to go watch this game?
Seriously.
You know, not being too far from here. Parents weekend, it is parents weekend at Florida. So maybe parents and students kind of like, oh, okay, let's get in there. And they come in and it fills in and it's loud and they have good reason to be engaged the whole time. Texas had to deal with that. And I mean, the very last play is always going to be like the thing people look at, but it was the whole course of the game where that was going on. You saw that with some of the false start things. As far as the defense goes, you got to, we can talk about the flaws. We can talk about the mess ups. We will, but you can look at Jaden Ball. You can look at Dallas Wilson, and you know, you can look at DJ Lagway managing the game well enough and know that they did things right. Like Dallas Wilson made some really good plays, but there were some times when he had the opportunity to make plays. He was pretty open. Field for Kobe Black just kind of fell, which, you know, that's bad luck. But then two guys went right by him or weren't able to bring him down over in that corner over there. So you got a lot from the secondary that just looked a little bit out of the norm compared to what they normally do.
It really was a punch in the gut for the Texas team this game because you can accept that they had the better running back and the O-line coming into it. You knew that Jaden Ball was one of the best. He seemed to get more carries in these games, and credit to Billy Napier, he got him those carries early on in the game. But the front seven difference, it just was better on Florida's side of things. They've stopped the run better. They had better penetration on pass rush. They had better linebacker play at times, which not something you expect to say after a game with the Texas Longhorns in it. And then on the receiver side of things, they had true freshmen making big plays that it's unfortunate that you also have guys, you know, from the state of Florida, like Jamie French on the Texas bench, and not calling for players to get benched on this Texas Longhorns roster, but it's just tough to see a guy like Dallas Wilson go out there and do that when you're a Longhorn fan. But I thought the wide receivers had a generally pretty good game for the Longhorns. That's not what lost the game for Texas. Neither was Arch Manning, but a lot of imperfections on this team that really reared their ugly head in right at the wrong time altogether at once.
Yeah, Wilson made his plays. He did really well. But with Ball, he's just the type of player that Texas doesn't have right now.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought that's what C.J. Baxter could have become, and then you get that knee injury, you get the hamstring thing. You don't know what that's going to be going forward. Contravian Weiser, he's going to – we talked about it a lot on this channel. He gets what it's blocked for. He can make some plays in space, but he's not the type of guy that can run people over. Jaden Ball is getting met pretty regularly at the line, but then he's falling over. And then the Gators come in, you know, get their guy and push him. So they were able to push a Texas front that really hadn't been pushed like that probably since the Georgia game last year.
Yeah, really.
I think Arizona State may stick out in people's minds. I think there's a little bit more misdirection, and there's a guy in the NFL on that team. That guy's going to be on the NFL too, but there was more with the line helping Florida in this game that you don't normally see Texas just not allow to happen, but get pushed around in that way.
Get bullied.
3-2.
Yeah.
0-1 in the SEC, and my takeaway was kind of that. Yeah, of course, practically everything's still on the table. One SEC loss. They made it to the conference championship game last year with just one loss in SEC play. But at the same time, and I know what Steve Sarkisian is going to say, it's like all our goals are still ahead of us. He can't let the locker room hear anything different. He's got to talk about how, hey, we can go win next week and the next week and the next week, make Atlanta make the playoff. But it's these types of games, especially on offense, that make you wonder, like, do they have it in them to go run the rest of the table, let alone maybe just slip up once? And it's just not one of those things that this type of performance inspires confidence in.
Yeah, when you look at these two teams from the 2024 Texas Longhorns to 2025, they were a lot safer in a lot of these games in 2024 compared to now because some of the teams were worse. You had a lot of backup quarterbacks that Texas played, and I thought it'd be a little different this year, but because Texas had a Matthew Golden out there and Quinn Ewers, who made a few less mistakes at times and a really good O-line, they're able to just kind of gut out some of the wins when you think about Vanderbilt and think about Arkansas. It seems less likely that's going to happen this year. It seems like you've already lost to a team in Florida who probably just pound for pound was a worse team than Longhorns coming into the game. So you're getting a better Oklahoma team this year. You're getting still a great Georgia team at Georgia. A&M's coming in better than they looked last year. Vanderbilt, despite what happened against Alabama, looks good. Mississippi State looks good. So you're getting a lot of these games on the road, and you come to the road and lost 2 straight games for the Longhorns. So it's hard for me to say and really agree with Sarkisian by going, we just got to take it week by week. We're going to have a chance to compete for the title. Let's get to 9 wins first before we can talk about anything closer to that. I think it's going to have to be a week-by-week thing, but no way they can come into Oklahoma favored in that game. I think that's going to be tough.
Yeah, and that's even maybe thinking about what does Mateer look like. And again, I don't begrudge him for saying that. He has to. If he comes out and says, like, season's over, well, you're going to see a hatful DKR when they get back to town against Vanderbilt. Like, it's just not something you can say. But we can see that the path to the not just to running the table, but just to the playoff is a little bit tougher because of what we saw from the run game, the offense, and then at times the defensive front here in the Swamp. So that'll do it from here. Red River Week, always the most fun week of the year.
Yeah.
It's a week you should be tuned in to Inside Texas. So make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you go to that first link in our description. Go join Inside Texas. Join for just $1. This is the most fun week of the year. No matter what happens, we've seen anything happen on that field. And now, for like the first time in a few years, it's going to be 2 high-quality teams coming in there. I know what John Mateer may be a little bit of a question of what's going to happen, but who knows? That may not matter with what Oklahoma has put together on defense this year and what Texas has on offense. So going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas postgame reaction, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors.